cash handling and management in Singapore, in my view, is not in keeping with the status of Singapore as an international financial center. I think in Singapore we are so focused on adopting technology, in the management of the bank transactions, that we tend to overlook the need for better efficiencies, in managing cash in Singapore. Perhaps it is in a way clouded by the perception, right, that we are moving towards a cashless society. But the truth of the fact is, that's probably a myth, because cash in circulation increases an average of 7 to 8% every year, which means that there's actually more cash in circulating each year. Now, I think there are various gaps, that exist in the cash management cycle at this particular point in time. Primarily because cost of funds is low, and therefore there is no motivation, to try and be more efficient in the way we move and we process cash. But I think that's a error in judgment, because the operating costs in general are increasing, and there is a need therefore for us to look at how we can increase the velocity of cash within society, how we can avoid double handling, because in double handling all you do is you increase the cost of operations, you don't increase the face value of the cash that you process. And more importantly, how do we reduce the idle cash within the system? How do we extract that out of the system? Because there are significant costs in there. And I think the opportunities exist for us to actually streamline all of these parts of the cash cycle. Well, if you were to look at it, I'll use a typical example, let's say of a supermarket, all right? A supermarket have takings, but they operate until 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. at night. Banks generally close at 4 to 5 during the day. There's a lot of cash that's been accumulated, right? This cash sits on premises day one. It doesn't get back into the banking cycle until day 2. And if you're moving it back into recirculation, it could take 3 up to possibly 6 days before it gets back into recirculation. I think there's opportunity for us to shorten that cycle, speed up the process, reduce costs in the process. Well, let me again use the retail starting point, because that's where cash is normally accumulated. You could effectively integrate cash from where it is collected at retail point and ensure that you move that quickly and efficiently through the whole cycle, the cash cycle, and get it back into recirculation without having duplication of efforts, without duplication in movements, without having the cash meandering through the system. And I think if you can do that, it actually reduces the cost of operations. It also creates value add to the banks. I'll give you another example of a program that we have developed outside of Singapore, and that is where we form a consortium of banks, because we know that every bank holds a reserve just in case. But if you think about the fact that just in case situation, how often does it happen? It's not often. And how often does it happen to 2 banks at the same time? Almost unthinkable. So if you can actually put together a program where the banks can pool together their reserves, access a common pool, then you can reduce the pool size without reducing the risks, without increasing the risks, to the banking industry. Because each bank within the consortium will actually have access to a pool of fund which is greater than the reserve that they were holding themselves. And in this way, you free up funds that can be returned to the banks, which they can then, lend out and generate income, on it, rather than let it sit there and not earn income. All right, so that's a program that we have done before. In the Singapore context, the ideal situation for me is a case where all the banks come together, operate out of a common cash center, all right, which can then reduce capital expenditure, It allows for the adoption of more technology in processing and managing the cash inventory. It also provides a more efficient way as a hub for the distribution of cash throughout the banking network. Of course, if you can then integrate that, with the central bank's cash center, that would be perfect, because then all cash that come back into the center, is deemed returned to central bank at the end of the day, and that is probably one of the most efficient model you can build into. All right. So there are definite opportunities, but I think we need to be more, a little bit more assertive, a little bit more aggressive in developing solutions in this area, so that it is in keeping with our image as an international financial center. Well, I think more importantly is, how does my overseas principals think about, the event as well? I think the feedback I've received over the last 2 days has been very positive. I think they were surprised by the turnout. They were surprised by the inquiries, that they have received, and they are very encouraged, and likely that we will come back and participate again in the show next year. And we are already making arrangements to book a booth for ourselves.